All right, this is the semifinals of Ultimecia, the second game we're looking at, or second set of games. This is Yevon versus Tezuka. Tezuka will end up winning this matchup, but we're going to look at three different games. I have not really looked them over, so I don't really know what happened here. Except I know, it's three games long, spoilers, and it should be interesting. So I want to talk a little about Yevon because he is now semi-finaled two consecutive tournaments. He made a finals in TTAC 3, but these are his second and third furthest run in tournaments after that finals, which was 2005, so 18, 19 years ago. So this is, I think, pretty clearly. I don't know. He might disagree, and if he disagreed, I would defer to him on this. But pretty clearly, the best run he's ever had. Also, dominating a whole bunch of other smaller events as well. Not like the best single tournament run, that's definitely TTAC 3, but the best like multiple tournament stretching over a bigger period of time run. And I think one thing he's been doing really successfully, for instance, in his win last round over Vid, which was a really impressive upset, I think he has done a really nice job of picking hands that give him a chance to be ahead of the curve. And I think his round two hand was probably the best hand of the round. I think 6-7-6-3s along with a horizontal or vertical 7-7 was the way to go. And specifically, he probably showed the best iteration. 4-7-3-7 ended up having remarkable synergy with the Behemoth Bros. And just a very nicely executed operation. And so when we see here he runs a bunch of 9-9 corners, my first instinct is, but I would want to run these 8-9-8s. You can see one of them in Tezuka's hand, and 8-9-8s are really good against these 9-9 corners. They're not that safe, and they have trouble recapturing each other, and they're just kind of clunky cards that are two-directional. But my second thought is, if the opponent cannot take the 9s, then you might just win on the spot, right? And so there's kind of this thing of like, I think last time he picked a dynamic and really effective hand. And this time he's picking a somewhat clunky, but also still potentially really effective hand. Also, notice his opposites all have fours up or down. So even if something, the Ifrit is in a pair with the Mog dude, Monteblanc, I think. But Ifrit could also play off the 9945, right? There are some potential alternative synergies there. And 6567 is a nice card for picking off the 9s. A serious problem for the hand is that Tezuka's hand, A, every card has multiple 1 gaps on it, right? Multiple directions in which they can take 9s. And B, that 7656 could be a problem. But my first instinct was I don't like this hand, and my second instinct is this hand is an interesting try, and I wouldn't play it for more than a game. And Yevon plays it for exactly one game. So I think in the end, I have no complaints about this hand, and I think it's an interesting try. We'll also note he's on second turn. This is a general principle thing, but I think dynamism helps first turn hands more, and pure power helps second turn hands more. I think I've justified that pretty well over the many videos I've made. So I'm not sure how strong Yevon's hand would have been on first turn here, but it should be a pretty reasonable second turn hand. I guess is where I want to go with that. Now, the rule set is 3 level 9s, no A's, 1 level 8, 1 level 7. There might be some stipulations, no rare semis or something, but that's the core to it. And so they each picked a 7-6-5-6 kind of thing for their level 7, and Yevon went for a 9-9 army, while Tezuka went for an 8-9-8 and two 8-9-7s on the level 9s, and a 1-7-8-9 on the level 8. Kind of neat that Yevon found a way to pair a level 8 and a level 9. Suggests that 9349 is pretty good for a level 8, and 4993 is fairly poor for a level 9. But actually, I think the game's complicated enough that what is good on one level doesn't necessarily mean it follows that it's underpowered or overpowered on another level. Though sometimes it does. Those Mystic Quest cards are something else. All right, let's look at the game. Tezuka uses his level 7 to start, which I think is a very, just reasonable instinct, right? Get rid of your weakest card. if we think directionally, he kind of has two cards for the corner of three, so it makes a lot of sense for him to direct the game towards seven, right? So yeah, this looks like a plausible place to start, and like a bunch of his hand want all of his cards are fine. If we do like talk to the cards thinking, all of his cards are fine seeing the game start in seven, right? None of his cards are complaining. All of them are at least half strong towards that square, and two of them are very happy towards that square. Compared to like, there's appealing starters like say you play 1, 7, 8, 9, and 3. Hmm. Say you play 7, 3, 9, 8 in 3. 7, 3, 9, 8 in 3. Well, maybe there's not quite a way to do it. But if you play something like that, your 1, 7, 8, 9 is pretty clumsy. And it still might be a good move. Yevon has two captures in two, but one you have a really strong combo back against. 4, 9, 9, 3, you have 8, 9, 8, 2, and 1. And he has a capture in six, which is a pretty good capture in six. It's probably not a very good starter. But my point is, if you started one of your big corners in three, your other one would be really unhappy. And this is a move that leaves the whole hand kind of willing to play the game. I'm mostly just going to be kind of explaining moves or like looking at a move and thinking, huh, how about that? Rather than kind of what alternatives would be. Because, we're not watching live. So we're going to follow the game rather than analyze the positions quite so much. All right, 4, 9, 9, 3, and 3. Given what we just said, it makes some sense for Yevon to play in 3, right? Tezuka's hand has cards 4, 3, not facing 3, right? And so directing the game towards that, and also specifically putting out a 9 that Tezuka cannot take, right? He sees 7, 6, 5, 6 came out of Tezuka's hand, and he says, all right, that's fine with me. I'm now going to attack that direction. So there are a bunch of different stylistic choices here. I think there's a certain type of player that looks in 5, specifically for a setup, but there aren't really setups in 5. And so if you go 5, it kind of gives Yevon a pretty easy move to make in 2. And well, that seems kind of clumsy for you, right? Locks in his card in 3. Okay, so scratch 5. If you're going to go in 1 or 9, you probably want to go 9, see if you can set up 6, right? The interactive moves you can make are 5 and 9, right? Those are the moves that give you play against the 9 that you cannot currently take. Do we have ways to do that? We have one way to do that. All right, so we have 9, 7, 2, 8, and 9, which I believe is the move we'll see Tezuka has made in a moment. So Tezuka goes for an interactive move. He removes a square he could not take. I'm just saying this because these videos went up recently, but Face Theory would be proud, right? Face Theory says 9, 7, 2, 8 is a move good at handling his move. And then I think the other kind of approach to this is to say, what if I force the action, right? What if I take immediately in 2 or go in 4 or 8? But let's start with take in 2. 1, 7, 8, 9 seems pretty clumsy. You get comboed by 4, 5, 9, 9. 9, 7, 2, 8. I mean, do we have any play after they go 6, 5, 6, 7 in 6? Doesn't seem obvious that we do. Okay. Another way to force the action would be to go in 4 or 8 and say, I'm just going to lock in my card if you don't take it, right? Sort of force them to interact and capture, or you get to lock something in. Now, Yevon has a few captures from 8, but only one capture left from 4. So my instinct, if we're going to do that, would be to go 8 and try to force Yevon to go 4. And I notice that Yevon's card for 4 walks into a combo, right? 4, 5, 9, 9, and 4 is comboed by 8, 9, 8, 2, and 1, but that is samed in return in 2. Yeah, I'm not sure how appealing that is. So given that I'm not finding pads there, I think it makes sense that Tezuka makes the interactive move. Note that he has a nice plus in 8 with 1, 7, 8, 9, so 1, 7, 8, 9 does have actually quite a bit of use, right? 1, 7, 8, 9 can land usefully in any side square here. It can land in 2, capturing 3. It can land in 6, recapturing 9. It can land in 8 with a double capture, potentially. And it can land in 4 with a capture, right? This is a card that could be running out of power, but is actually quite well. The card doing quite well. The card I'd be worried about, 8982 is obviously going to play well, right? 8982 is good in six, good as a sweeper. 7398 seems to me the problem. We want to find a way to use 7398 or its potential trouble. Now, what do you do if you're Yevon? There's a bunch of safeties, right? You have safeties in either 6 or 8. And notably, if you say play 9, 3, 4, 9, and 8, any of Tezuka's captures in 4, either 8, 9, 8, 2 or 1, 7, 8, 9, I guess they don't need to capture because you didn't flip 9. So they could go 7, 3, 9, 8, and that is actually a pretty good use for 7, 3, 9, 8, and it does set up a threat in 5. That might be a good response. Probably okay, though. 9, 3, 4, 9, and 6, I guess, you're walking into combos because you're flipping 9. Probably not as good. I'd be thinking about 8 here. 8 would be my instinct. I believe Yevon makes a kind of surprising move, in 4. Which I think is surprising on 2 fronts. But one thing I hadn't noticed yet was, and this is actually a little similar to a Seto move that confused me, Yevon has a combo threat in 8, which I'd missed. Now, that combo threat has potentially limited equity, right? Because say Tezuka goes in 1. If Yevon takes the plus in 8, which flips 7 and thus flips back 4, it also flips 9. And so if Tezuka then combos via 6, that flips a whole bunch of cards, and I don't think you're flipping very many back. I don't see it. So 7398 in 1 looks kind of dangerous. Maybe you can just play 2 and you're fine. I don't think 2 works. Or if it does, it doesn't work with 4599. So the line I'm looking at is, I just said I wasn't going to get into like too many details, but 73981, 45992, 89828, I believe wins. Oh, maybe it doesn't. Maybe just Mont Blanc and 6. You get plussed, but it doesn't flip anything extra. Okay. I think the instinct here should be to go in 8, blocking that square, or go in 1. Let's dump eval. I'm just curious if there is anything here. Oh, all the moves in 1 lose. Really? Oh no, it loses to 9349 and 2, not to 4599. Okay, I was thinking if it loses to 4599, that's trouble. All right, well, ignore all of my analysis. Though I think it's a move like you have to check. Just because it doesn't work doesn't mean you shouldn't check it, right? It is a critical move to check. But it loses to 9349. Interesting. All right. So Tezuka goes in 8. Keep 7398, but 7398 now has use, right? It now has a threat in both 1 and 5. So not so problematic to have in the hand. And this looks fairly dangerous for Yevon, right? Like, if you play either of the cards in 6 with the captures, then I assume 1789 lands in 5, right? So you capture something, you go up 6-4, but there's a double capture back. And then you can just play in 2. That's not so big a problem. Ooh. No. Alright, well, I'm lazy. Dump Yevon. Yeah, so the moves in 6 do tie. Alright. Yevon did not go for those. He went for 5. And I think this is neat because we actually get to see the synergies between his 9/9s, right? He has that nice Seimin too. And this is also a tie, mostly based on Mont Blanc landing really effectively in 2. So it does, and we get a tie. Huh. Interesting game. Those moves in like next to a starter with big numbers facing out, relying on comboing back through the card, are clearly happening a lot this round, and they're all surprising me. So that's fun. I think this was a nice try from Yevon, throwing out a hand that could potentially have advantages and being ready to switch off it if it wasn't clicking. That said, I do think Tezuka had a little bit more pressure this game and was the person who could play looking for advantages. All right, let's move on to game 2. So we can see here Yevon has switched up his hand. He's gone for 8/9/8s. He's kept 1/9/9, which he has well covered in captures. He's gone for a 7/2/7/8. Sergio went for a similar card. I'm not sure if that card played all that well in that game. I'm not sure it will here either. I'm a little skeptical of that one. But you do have to include a level 7 somewhere. And we saw Seto basically sweeping with the 7/6/7/5 and a lot of variations. So that seems a nice pick. But I think I do prefer the 7/6/5/6 type of last game or the 7/6/7/5, this one from Tezuka's hand, to the 7/2/7/8. On a hand balance perspective, I do worry that card is going to feel misaimed. That if it was a card more for 1, the hand might feel a little more balanced. Maybe not, though, because it does have a relatively unique weakness in the hand. Okay, and Tezuka has switched out his level 7. And Tezuka starts, I believe, I didn't put in the moves this time, so I have to actually play them. Tezuka starts in 7 again, and every single game Tezuka will play a 7/6 corner in 7, and we'll see how Yevon replies. Here, he again goes for 3, and again says, you just gave your capture of a 9 down from 3, I can now do it while creating more problems for you, because I can do it with an 8 facing out that you have limited play against, so I can try to improve on what I did the previous game. And so we're kind of left in a similar structure to last game. I mean, of course we're left in a similar structure where Tezuka has a choice between interacting with the opponent's card or trying to build something himself. And so the similar move to last game would be 9/7/2/8 and 9, saying again, I'm going to set something up against the side that I have trouble taking. And again, I would worry that the 7/3/9/8 is going to play poorly. But instead, Tezuka decides to force the action. Alright, so first thing to notice, 9/3/4/9 and 9 is covered, and 7/2/7/8 and 9 I would say is covered, but you probably play 1/7/8/9 and 6 to capture, not the combo with 7/3/9/8. Yeah, I think that's correct, because if you combo with 7/3/9/8, you get comboed back in 5. Is 4 covered? Well, 8/9/8/2 is the only capture in 4, and that is covered by 7/3/9/8, which cannot be comboed back. So, okay, this time, and we didn't pause to really think it through, but this time Tezuka notes, you do have 1 capture, and I have play against that capture, so I'm going to force you to either take that capture or not be able to threaten my card in 7. Yeah, I mean, I tend to like this way of playing. And Yevon plays in 2, which, again, is extremely logical, because Tezuka did not interact with the card in 3. The card in 3 is safe to 6, so you block the other side, right? Very similar concepts of the moves. Tezuka notes, my card in 7, you have trouble taking from 4, so I'm going to block 8. Yevon goes, my card in 3, you cannot take from 6, I'm going to block 2. One of my kind of heuristics for opposite corners is if it's harder to take than the card in the initial corner, if your far corner is harder to take than the starting corner, you're usually at least equal, maybe sometimes a little better. And here we can see, Yevon has essentially already locked in a card, and Tezuka has sort of locked in a card, but not quite, right? It's reliant on holding specific things in the hand. On the other hand, I think this general structure now of cards in 2 and 3 and cards in 7 or 8, first turn has so many practical ways to attack it, right? Sometimes you play in 9, sometimes you play in 1, sometimes the Z's work out, or the S's in this case work out really well. Sometimes you can play in 4. If there's a capture in 6, that's often appealing. Here there isn't, but there's so many squares that could be good that it's a really difficult type of position to calculate out well. You really have to rely on, like, I see the cards working together and I trust my kind of evaluation instincts, because you're not going to be able to calculate it cleanly. There's too many options. So, from my perspective of like wanting to be able to calculate things when I'm actually playing, when I'm talking, I try to go on general principles. Uh, this is a really difficult move to make because I'm not going to have checked everything, and that feels highly risky to me. Or I'm not even going to be able to say I've definitely checked the most important moves, because there's a whole bunch that could be the most important. Now, what do seem like the most important moves? Well, I would think 1, 7, 8, 9, and 5 is the most important to S, right? Your 1, 7, 8, 9 is not going to be a very good up-down sweeper, but you put that in 5, 7, 3, 8, 9 has some play on both sides, and 8, 9, 8, 2 has some play on both sides. I'd be curious what that looks like. All right, there's a few ties there, 1 or 6. Okay. So I guess 6 is interesting because it gets your better sweeper out of your hand and leaves you with your worst sweeper, and you're just about able to tie. All right. And you can also start in 1, but 1 and 6, fundamentally, 1 is the way you're not going to lose on the left, and 6 is the way you're not going to lose on the right. All right, so a few ties there. Probably not a great winning chance. Then the next move that comes to mind for me is 1, 7, 8, 9, and 4. Kind of trying to say, okay, if you take me, if you go in 1, I go 7, 3, 9, 8, and 5. I will be up 6, 4. And 8, 9, 8, 2 is actually a pretty good up-down sweeper on the right. And I believe 1 should be losing here, but surely there's something, so we'll see what they say. There's ties in 6 and 9. Not the first squares you look at, but definitely findable. All right. But my point, I think, is being shown here, which is there's a lot of moves that have some potential to be dangerous. And I think Tezuka goes with a wholly different one than the ones we've been looking at. He goes with 7, 3, 9, 8, a card we wanted to see out of the hand, in 9. All right. So if 8, 9, 8, 2 were to capture it, Yevon would go up 6, 4. But we could then play, say, 1, 7, 8, 9, and 5. That makes it 5, 5, and 8, 9, 8, 2 sweeps the endgame. So you can't capture that from 6, and that already means Yevon's going to have to be pretty careful. 8, 9, 8, 2 is his only other capture in 4, but that gets comboed real bad, and there's no play after that in 1. So when kind of the obvious captures are not safe, obviously it is a harder position to hold. I would also note that something like 7, 2, 7, 8, and 6 is actually met, I think, probably can be met multiple ways, but I would meet it with 1, 7, 8, 9, and 5, not capturing anything, but 8, 9, 8, 2 again sweeps the endgame and you win. So this is a position you have to be pretty careful. How many ties do you think there are? I'm going to go with like 1 or 2. Just 1. You must find 1, and Yevon does find 1. And this was something I had thought going into this match, is that Yevon has been playing fantastic triple triad. He has been finding ways to get advantages out of the opening and from hands. And I think his 9-9 try in the previous game was a really interesting try. and when he didn't like it, he moved to a more standard hand. But he's willing to try things that are creative ideas that give a real chance for him to get a serious advantage. And whenever he has been getting those advantages against turds in TTAC, against Vid here in Ultimecia, you know, he's been doing that in a number of tournaments and beating really top tier opponents. But it tends to come out of getting advantage. And I think his play from neutral to disadvantaged positions has been significantly worse, and he has not defended those so well. There have been some careless mistakes. On the other hand, here he is finding the only ties. And I believe, actually, we can go back to it. I believe if we go to the last game, yeah, this position, there were 3 ties here. You know, there was room to screw up, and he didn't do it, right? And here, there was much less room, and he again finds the perfect move and the only tie. So I think my evaluation here of Yevon was incorrect, and he is playing even better than I give him credit for, and I think he's been playing really, really well. Tezuka goes in 4, but we see here the 1789 not quite having the directional power that it needs to clinch the game, and despite going in 5 on the final turn, with a tri-directional card, no capture is available, and we get a tie. Now, technically, the next game used different hands, but because I'm lazy, I can basically only open 2 iterations of this program at once, and I don't want to have to re-put in the cards and stuff. So Yevon has switched out 7676 for 7686 for this game, but the way the card is used will end up being an 8, where the difference between a 7 and an 8 hitting the wall is nothing. So I'm going to be lazy and just show the game from here. Tezuka starts in 7 again. And Yevon, who I think has done reasonably well with his moves in 3, certainly I think Tezuka's had a little more pressure these games, but also the moves in 3 have clearly worked well and gotten him reasonable positions. And this seems like a slightly first turn favored set, so if you're slightly behind on second turn, you're doing fine. Yevon tries something new, and he goes 1898 in 4. He captures immediately. Asking, does Tezuka have sufficient recaptures? Well, 9, 7, 2, 8, and 8, I think we can rule out due to 5. I suspect Tezuka's not actually in trouble there, right? Like, even if you walk into this kind of huge combo, there's a very good chance he could just, like, grab safety somewhere and have pretty good cards for that end game. And I would be very surprised, yeah, if this was losing. Yeah, 8, 9, 8, 2, and 1 ties, and going in 9 also ties. Now, you might say there are only 2 ties, so that's dangerous, but here, in fact, there's only 2 ties for the opponent, right? So the number of ties is often not a good indicator of how dangerous it is. You're in this position, you're almost certainly going to play safety in 1, and it turns out it's the opponent that has to be careful. So this is not actually a serious problem. But, you know, this is a little scary of a move to make. Similarly, this looks like, why am I suffering like this? And again, I would guess this position is fine. And again, the same card won, this time the only tie, but again, it's the straightforward move to make, and it gives the opponent only 2 ties. So it's not, yeah. I sometimes use win, tie, loss counts, but they can be kind of misleading for who has the advantage in certain types of positions. And you have to look at the games to get a real sense of what's happening. So these moves in 8, I think, like, I don't think this loses. Like, we can check. It does lose. This one's comboed the other way. I only checked 7, 2, 7, 8. But if you can keep 7, 2, 7, 8 in your hand, of course, this move is not so appealing. Yeah, so I was assuming, because this was comboed by 7, 2, 7, 8. So I'm going to assume this one isn't losing, and indeed this one is not. Okay. But 7, 3, 9, 8 would be, because you can combo with 7, 6, 7, 6. Which I totally blanked on. Alright. The other way to take is 1, 7, 8, 9. And that seems like it should be fine to me. But I think here we see this 1898, that 8 facing out is kind of this clunky hard number for Tezuka to take. And so while anything like this Yevon could put would potentially walk into a combo that you may or may not mind allowing, right? Like, You allow this combo. Okay, you allowed that combo, but you flipped a whole lot back. But even if you just blocked with this kind of move, um, often these positions are quite good, right? Anything that lands in 2, you kind of have a really nice thing to stick in 5. Here you combo, so I guess the card that lands in 2 has to be here. And this 8982 is not playing that well. It's not playing that well. Yeah. Alright, well, still has enough use. It's funny it pluses the, wait, what? No, okay, it's there, yeah. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, 9728 control space. So there's probably a better move in 5 here. Let's see. Yeah, the other cards. Okay, so that's straight up win. Because we have the combo. What am I doing? Pluses are just going past me today. All right. So my point is, I think a move like 1 here is pretty good and tricky for Tezuka to meet. And that was true, even if everything else I'm saying is just nonsense. Shame about that. Alright, so I think you can take back an 8. But it does look tricky, right? These are scary moves to make, even if this one is fine. And there was a game, I think it was a Piggy game, maybe against Slash of Time, maybe quarterfinals of TTAC 14, where there was a capture like this, and I thought it was pretty good. And I thought there was a move like this in 8, very similar to this. And I thought it wasn't much, and then Piggy played it, and it was immediately apparent it was pretty good pressure. So, but here I don't think it's very much. But Tezuka goes in 1. And Tezuka says, no, it is you that will have a tricky, clumsy time taking things. Right? And this time I can see a same. Even today, I can see a same. Right? This is a problem. Probably don't want to take it that way. And your other way of capturing, you're really running out of left power. So this gets comboed, but this doesn't. And suddenly, I have more things to attack than you do, I think. I mean, this should be fairly neutral, let's be lazy. Yeah, should be a tie. But there's some play there. You have to be careful on the defense there. And then there's options to go in 8, and Yevon does go in 8. And this looks to me like a very normal move. You don't give up a card that attacks 1 or 4, right? You keep 9349 in your hand. You could have used something like 8982, sure, but Tezuka has pretty good play against that. This looks like a very normal move. Keep in mind this was a 7686, not a 7676, and again, I was lazy putting in the cards. But this turns out to be the losing mistake, and that is rough, because this looks like a very normal, usually going to be fine move. And Tezuka punishes it very precisely, just showing, I believe there's only one win here. You can see only one move shows up in green. Tezuka blocks 5 and does so in a way that walks into big potential combos, right? 7, 2, 7, 8, and 2. I'm going to sneeze. Sorry about that. Hopefully you had time to, not have your ears blown out. I'm a horrendous editor, so no one's ears will be saved. But this looked really scary to walk into. And, we just went down a bazillion to not that. So why is this justified? Did I put in the cards wrong? Is this justified? This is justified. Alright. I was just scrolling down to make sure we see green. No, we have a plus wall back. Okay, I just can't see anything today. Yeah. So we combo back there. Alright. Good thing I'm not in this tournament. Alright, I swear my analysis used to be more on point. Alright, so you can't take the combo in 2 because it's comboed back. And thus, if you can't, Tezuka can keep 1789 up, threaten that square, And also, it can land really well in 2 if needed. Yeah, that's a really strong potential sweeper here. And if, for instance, something like, oh, this is cute, 9349 here, you have the combo, but you used up your combo back card, but you actually set up so you still have the combo. 9 plus 1 equals 8 plus 2. Ooh, that's rough. Oh, the numbers work together so perfectly. And of course, if they use some other card, well, now it actually, you don't need to hold on to 1789 because there's no threat in 2 anymore. But you may as well win with it, right? And you're up 6-4, so 8982 and 2 can't be captured, but it doesn't do enough. Really, really nicely figured on the exact numbers. And how does the game play out? Tezuka tries 6. Was there anything to try in 3? No, because you can't set up a threat. Like, if 9349 had a 3 facing down, you could, like, try to set up a threat in 6 while blocking 3, so you have a threat in 2 as well. But there's just, you don't have a way to do so. And 1789 just sweeps. You can't trick him to block the wrong squares. Yeah. 6-4 to Tezuka. So Tezuka advances to his second finals ever, and which is also his second finals in the last 2 years. I talked about this too much in the last video, so we won't talk about it again, but ties count. And, like, I think Tezuka is very strong. I think whoever wins between Midas and DJ is very strong. But, Seto's the favorite. But in a ties count format, there is a really good chance for ties in any given game. And so it would be very easy for Seto to tie twice and not win or lose. And if that happens, and there's a decisive game in Tezuka versus the winner of DJ Midas, that determines the winner, right? So it is pretty easy to imagine a world where someone wins the title without defeating Seto. And that really raises the chances for someone like Tezuka, who I think is pretty good at getting an early initiative and creating serious winning chances. So I'm excited to see that. I think from a viewer's perspective, it's going to be fun to see how people play when you're kind of in situations where there's some pressure to create winning chances. Which, of course, could mean someone like overpresses, gets too desperate for it. I did this in Rhino all the time. And plays moves that just, like, they're hoping complicate rather than, like, are actually good. And that'd be interesting to see as well. So, yeah, Tezuka's playing awesome, has pretty much just played. I don't remember what happened the previous rounds. These rounds, it looks like he played basically perfectly. Against Blizzard, he played very well. He had first turn twice and managed to win on a rule set that turned out to be very good for second turn. And in the first round, he beat Akiyama. Yeah, Tezuka's playing incredibly. Seto is playing incredibly. Midas just knocked out Delial. And DJ's playing, like, perfectly too. So he doesn't have the big famous win yet to put on this tournament, but he has played really impeccably so far as well. And I should probably try to cover more of his run than I have so far. We'll see about that. But yeah, going to be a good finals. And the third matchup, Midas DJ, has not been played. I think it's going to be played next weekend. So about a week after I record this one. And go DJ. But also, if Midas wins, I should check actually. I don't know how to do this well. All right, so let's end the video. But I think Midas is playing for his fourth finals. I believe he made the finals of SE Ward, where he lost to Seto. More recently, SE Nephilim, where he lost to Seto, as well as myself, three-way finals. Seto's in every three-way finals. And then the TTAC 12 or 13 that he lost to Smokes in the finals. Though he beat Smokes this tournament, as well as Delial. God, Midas is having a great run. So, So this could be his fourth finals, and I believe that would be a record. I believe that would be the most finals ever made by someone to not win. So we would have to either follow that up by winning, or he would have a nice title and a nice claim to being the greatest non winner of all time, which for my money is Chickeny, followed closely by Piggyman. But I'm excited to see what's going to happen to Midas on my rankings after this tournament, because I think he's a little outside the top 30 right now, but he probably, I mean, it's really hard to imagine with this run he doesn't break clearly into the top 30, passing players like Kazik and Mafi Josie and Ulti, um, with his fourth finals if he gets there. And DJ. DJ is a player who I have at the kind of lower end of my top 100 because he hasn't had that many deep runs, but he's so solid every tournament. He's so like, he doesn't drop games he shouldn't drop, but he hasn't gotten those big wins. So he's been really close a number of times. And if he could break through, there is a very good chance. Obviously, if he wins, he goes up a lot. But even if he doesn't, I would not be surprised to see him top 50, 60 all time range. He's very good, and again, he doesn't have that like career capping performance, but this could be that moment, and that would be really cool.